Okay, everybody, we are going to talk today about the Mycenaeans. So, the Mycenaeans come from what is known as the mainland of Greece. So, let's go to the map and see where we're at. So, oh, look, there's us way over there. So, we're talking about this area of the world and the mainland of Greece. So, we'll zoom in. So, there's the island of Crete where the Minoans were. The Mycenaeans come from this part of Greece that's called Peloponnesus. So there, Mycenae, which is the city that the Mycenaeans came from, is like right over here. So this is where the Mycenaeans are. And as you remember, they're the people that eventually go to Crete when they're looking for the Minoans and they see what happened. They take over Crete and they become basically the powerful Greeks during this time. That's going to change as time goes on, but for now, that's what's going on. So, as I mentioned, the earliest settlers of this land are the Mycenaeans. They have kings that build fortress palaces on hilltops. Now, these palaces, where the king lives, they're large enough they can provide shelter from enemies for ordinary citizens. So basically, if the Mycenaeans were getting attacked, the palace fortress, it's almost like a castle, not quite a castle, but almost a castle, could protect the ordinary citizens. And the main feature of this Mycenaean palace is something called a Megaron, not Megatron, the Transformer, a Megaron, which is a meeting room that had a cool-looking fireplace. I'm going to show you a picture in a second, where the king held meetings and gatherings. So, here is a Megaron. If you're wondering, oh my gosh, there's memes. Oh yeah, we're going to get to that. So, this is a Megaron. You can see a fireplace in the center. This is where the Mycenaeans would have their meeting rooms. And check out all of the frescoes. Look at that. We got frescoes on the wall. We got tiled ceilings. Fancy. And then this, where the smoke is going up, picture like a skylight that has an opening. So basically like a roof with a hole in it for the smoke to come out. Pretty cool stuff. All right. Now, land in Mycenaean society is divided into pieces called estates. So what an estate is a piece of land. These estates were farmed by slaves. Unfortunately, just like all the ancient civilizations, Greeks have slaves as well. This is a horrible, horrible situation. And again, I know you've heard me say this many times this year. I'm not going to stop saying it probably. When people ask me, would I ever want to go live in this time? The answer is a big fat no, because of their treatment towards women, the fact that there's slavery. Like, this is horrific. This is horrible. Another feature is something called a tenant. Now, today, the word tenant means somebody that like rents things. So if, let's say, you lived in an apartment, you don't own the apartment, somebody else does, so you pay rent. So you are a tenant. It's people that in ancient times lived and worked on the land, but they could leave whenever they wanted to. So essentially, some estates, if you were very wealthy, you had slaves do all your farm work. If you were looking to make some money, you would rent a piece of your land. The tenants would work there. They would give you some of the crops and things. Like, you'd get like a piece of their farm, like supplies that they produce. But it was an option for people that weren't wealthy enough to own land. They could still work and get the benefits of living on a farm. Now, when you had to pay taxes in Mycenaean society to the king, it could be in any of these forms. Some people, it was horses, chariots, weapons. So then the king would use these all for his military. Wheat, honey, animal skins that the king would use, obviously, to feed his family and for decoration and for clothing and things like that. Now, the Mycenaeans were big hunters, and there were a lot of different animals in Greece that the Mycenaeans would hunt. They hunted rabbit, deer, boar, which is like those like pigs with horns, wild bulls, and game birds. Now you might be thinking, what's a game bird? Game birds are birds that you hunt. So things like duck, quail, geese, that kind of stuff. Similar to the Minoans, women would often ride with the men during the hunt. However, hunting in Mycenaean society isn't an exclusive female activity the way it was for the Minoans. Now, when the hunters are going after bigger animals, they used greyhound dogs to help. So the way that it would work is, let's say there's a bird flying in the sky, and they use their bow and arrow to hit the bird. The greyhound dog would then either go and retrieve the bird, or if it was a bigger animal, it would run forward and start barking where the animal was, and you would just follow the bark, and then that's where it was. So they used all different kinds of weapons depending on what they're hunting. So they used nets. That would be something good to catch things like the wild bull and the boar. Spears were something they used for the deer, for the boar and bulls. Once they were netted, then they would kill them with the spears. Slings, almost like a slingshot. That was more for your smaller animals like rabbit, and if they were close enough to a bird to do that. And then bow and arrow were pretty versatile. Like they could use that for any of those different animals they hunted. All right, now, as you learned in Minoan society, the Minoans and Mycenaeans traveled and traded a lot with each other. And what happened is the Mycenaeans tried to make their own version of Minoan products when the Minoans were gone. So they started to write like the Minoans, dress like the Minoans. Most importantly, they learned to build ships and navigate like the Minoans. And that takes us to our first meme that some of you were eyeing. So here we go. It's loading. This is the famous, like, if you've seen this, the Spider-Man meme. So we got the Minoans and Mycenaeans when you don't know whose culture was based on the others. Well, I can tell you the Mycenaean culture is based on the Minoans. But what the meme is trying to say is that it blended so much, you don't know which one is based on which. So there you go. All right, next. The Mycenaeans also grew olives like the Minoans, but they made presses to squeeze the oil from the olives. And olive oil is a huge product for Greece because people would trade for large quantities of olive oil because you're using it for many different things. It's used for cooking. It's used for fuel for lamps. It's used as a lotion. In fact, a lot of I'm not talking like suntan lotion. I'm talking like lotion, like in cream form. Lots of lotions today have some sort of oil. It could be sesame oil, could be flaxseed oil, could be any kind of oil. But in Greece, it was olive oil, and they specifically use it as a sunscreen. Now, the reason I differentiated it is I didn't want you to think they're the same thing. Lotion, some lotions today have some sunscreen ability. So I guess olive oil, depends how they're using it. It could be used as a sunscreen, but mainly as a lotion. So, because there's so many different uses, as I said, many ancient people traded a lot for olive oil, and the Mycenaeans sold it in large clay jars. They also sold a perfumed version of it, so that's where the lotion version of it comes in painted vases, and this makes the Mycenaeans as a civilization rich. Because they have so many olives, therefore they can produce so much olive oil, and lots of people in the ancient world want to trade for it. In addition, the Mycenaeans are warriors that like to conquer. In battle, they used large shields and wooden frames and fought with spears and swords. They also had some fancy bronze armor for their leaders. So the Mycenaeans in the beginning start taking over various parts of Greece. As I mentioned, they take Crete. So they're pretty powerful early on in Greek history. As I said, that's definitely going to change. Now, what ends up happening is there is civil war among the Mycenaeans, and they're fighting each other. Then, when things settle down, they learn how to build ships, become united, and they would raid nearby islands. Some of these Mycenaeans are the pirates I was mentioning in the notes about the Minoans. So some of these pirates that were dealing with the Minoans were from Mycenaean lands. Now, it's not like the Mycenaean government is doing this. These are just random criminals, because pirates are criminals, random criminals from the Mycenaean lands that are trying to steal things from the Minoan ships. And as you learned, the Minoans then build a prow to bash into the ships. They put up sails. They have a deck to protect the rowers, all that kind of stuff. All right. Now, this bullet point here is something we're going to get to in the next notes. A very famous thing that happens at this time is something called the Trojan War. The Trojan War is a 10-year battle where Mycenaeans and other Greek city-states join together against the city-state of Troy. Now, let's go to the map so I can show you. Let's zoom in here. All right, so here is the Mycenaean lands. I'm going to zoom in here. So this is Turkey, right across the Aegean Sea from Greece. And the ancient city of Troy was located right over here. So here's what was happening. I'll zoom out so you can get a good sense of this. So Troy was like right over here. What was happening is, in order for the Greeks to sail across the Aegean Sea, then they would get through this little waterway, was called the Sea of Marmara, and then over here is the Black Sea. So what the Trojans would do, because their city is right on the entrance to the Sea of Marmara and then the Black Sea, the Trojans would charge ships tolls. So it got expensive for the Mycenaeans to trade with these areas by the Black Sea. So the Mycenaeans decided, you know what? Instead of paying the toll, let's conquer Troy, and then we own the toll. We get to charge everybody else, and we can make some money, and we get to go into the Black Sea areas for free. So that's the real reason behind the Trojan War. However, there's a myth version of the Trojan War called the Iliad. And like I said, that's going to be the focus of part 2's notes. And the Iliad was written by this guy called Homer. He is a blind Greek poet, and he wrote it way after the Trojan War. Now, time for another meme. So, what people think when they hear Homer? First of all, this is a great thing about the internet, but holy cow, dude, fix your spelling. Can't spell incredible, can't spell course, but made a good meme. Incredible ancient Greek poet who influenced the course of history by inventing the Iliad, and then, of course, the very famous Homer Simpson dough. Like, I can't do it justice, but I'm sure some of you right now are saying it to yourself. Let's see. Hold on. As we're thinking about this, I'm gonna give you a little bit if you have no idea what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. The very famous this. So that's the little Homer Simpson dough. If you didn't know, now you know. All right, moving on. So like I said, Trojan War you're going to learn a ton more about in part two's notes. So this war goes on. The Trojan War lasted 10 years. The Mycenaean Greeks win. They defeat Troy. But then there's some trouble. Here's what happens. After their win in Troy, the Mycenaeans had a series of civil wars in Greece because there were a bunch of different cities that joined with the Mycenaeans to defeat Troy. And the Mycenaeans, after winning, say to the other cities, you still have to pay the toll because this was our idea. And they're like, what are you talking about? We sat there, we fought with you, we died with, like, we lost troops. Like, no, we get the freebies as well. And it leads to massive civil war in Greece over who should control what. Now, things settle down, and 100 years after the Trojan War, I know, huge time jump, the Mycenaeans aren't as strong as they used to be, and they're about to get even weaker. So, people north of Greece, the area that is today Macedonia and Albania, is a group of people called the Dorians. And let me show you where their land is. So here's the country. Actually, the country today, they changed their name very recently. They're now called North Macedonia. So let's just make that as accurate as possible. Delayed reaction as I type north. There we go. North Macedonia and Albania. So in this area, there was a group of people called the Dorians. So they're about to mess with Greece down below. Now, they invade the land and they conquer the Mycenaeans. They basically, they basically conquer all of Greece except Athens. Athens kind of like is able to hold its own and stay independent. Dorian swords were not made as well, but they were made out of a stronger material. Now, I know that sounds a little confusing, but let me break this down for you. What I mean by that is the Greek swords were much fancier looking, but the Dorian swords were stronger. So the Dorian swords don't have fancy designs, but they can hold up better. Many Mycenaeans fled and settled in islands in the Aegean Sea and the western shoreline of Asia Minor in what is today Turkey. And I'm going to show you all this. And that is named Ionia by the Mycenaean settlers. So let's back it up here. Let's go here. Okay. So the Dorians come from here. They rage on Greece. It gets so bad, some Greeks living here flee to these islands in the Aegean Sea and the coast of what is today Turkey, and they call it Ionia. Now, if you look at a map, this is something kind of confusing. There is a sea right over here called the Ionian Sea, but Ionia is way over here in what is today Turkey. So a lot of times people are like, why is Ionia nowhere near the Ionian Sea? And the reason for that is as the Dorians invade Greece and some Greeks flee to the islands and this stretch of land in what is today Turkey, they name their new settlement Ionia after the sea they used to live near. So there you go. All right. Now, all of the Mycenaean cities are controlled by the Dorians except for Athens, as I mentioned. The Dorians try and take over Athens, but can't. They even tried to cut off Athens' water supply, not knowing there was an underground river source that the Dorians couldn't get to. So Athens is able to survive this really brutal time in Greek history known as the Dark Age. And I'm going to talk more about why it's called the Dark Age. Now, they don't really take control and advance society The Dorians just kind of like destroy the place, kill people, steal things for 800 years. I need to say that again. 800 years. That is like a imagine in New Jersey, somebody like destroying things from the year 1221 until now. 800 years. That's just crazy. It's not safe to trade or go to school. Therefore, these people that are living in Greece during this time, there's no new products coming to town because it's not safe for merchants to go there. People aren't taught how to read or write because it's not safe for schools to open. Communities get abandoned. People just take off. People who grow up in the old Mycenaean land never learn certain skills like fresco painting and jewelry making. Their focus is on surviving the Dorian raids. So, because this goes on for 800 years, certain skills go away. Because, picture this. Imagine your schooling ended in 6th grade and the internet didn't exist. There's no internet, right? And as you grew up, you then had to teach your children things. Well, you might not remember every single thing that you learned from, birth to now. So your children would learn less. And then when they grew up, they would teach their children and they would learn less because there's no reinforcement. So skills go away. And that's why it's called a dark age. It's when instead of civilization advancing, it actually takes some steps back. Oh, that's a fun, this happens sometimes in my notes. That's Mr. Gujic did not turn his ringer off when he made the notes. So that, don't worry, if you're listening in class right now, that was not your phone. That was my phone sitting next to me at my desk at home. Anyway, eventually, after 800 years, the Dorians calm down. The people that are left in Greece start to rebuild civilization and things go back to normal. Herding and farming become popular. Kings start to gain power again. Independent communities eventually become the Greek city-states. Athens, that is able to survive all this. If you are ever wondering why Athens is such a big, powerful, ancient Greek city, it's because they had an 800-year advantage, because while everyone else is basically fleeing for their lives and hiding from the Dorians, Athens is able to hold it together. This term in Greek history is called the Hellenistic Age. And the term Hellenes means Greeks. So when you hear the Hellenistic Age, that means like the Greek age. Because the Greeks are about to really excel from this. Since the Dorians are now gone. And if you're like, where'd you go? Why'd they leave? 800 years is a long time. So they just kind of go back to their homeland. And some of them decide, like, I like it here. Let's kind of build a new life and not be jerks. So I got one final meme for you related to this. Here it is. So as I said, this time period is known as the Greek Dark Ages. There's the Dorian invasion. And here's the poor Mycenaean Greeks about to take it right in the face. All right, so that is notes part 1.